Happy Saturday and welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is January 9th, just after 10 a.m. here on the East Coast. We're here to break down tonight's NBA slate, and hopefully we were able to cash last night. Unfortunately, I did not have enough Royce O'Neal, Brandon Clark, Diallo. Go down the list of some of these guys that came in last night. And I know anyone who follows my man Adam here on Twitter noticed that he mentioned about maybe if you listened to him a little bit yesterday that one of these guys that went off big, he did mention. So Adam, man, good morning, man.
Yeah, how's it going? Chris Boucher came through last night. Hopefully for people that watch the show, I ended up personally not having much, which is really pissing me off. It was an interesting slate. A lot of popular plays didn't do well. A lot of random plays, like you were just listing, did really well. So you tend to get those on those big 10-game slates. We got a 7-gamer today. Should be a little bit more of the same probably.
I remember I had a lot of Toronto Raptors going in. So as it going to that game, I'm like, okay, let's go Raptors. And they balled out last night. I mean, I think 130-ish
144.
Crazy number. I mean, it seems like we're seeing more of that. And the crazy thing about that is they gave up 46 points in the first quarter.
Yeah, they didn't, at least from memory, they didn't get off to a great start, because I remember looking at my Toronto teams and just being like, oh, great, like my Van Vliet and my Siakam and everything's just not going to show up tonight. They came through.
Yeah, man, it was a good night overall, but of course you had to have some of those value plays to get in there. Of course, we'll get you ready for tonight's NBA slate. Of course, be sure to smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, notification bell, so you know when new shows are live here on the channel, as we're going to have you covered all day long for the start of today's NFL playoff action. Lawfully Alex and Ben will be coming up next as they'll get into the NFL deeper dive. Then at noon, it is NFL Live Before Lock with Greg and Kyle to get you ready for all of tonight's action. It'll be a late night for me as I'll be making my trip over Raymond James Stadium in about 4 hours or so to get ready for tonight's game. So it'll be a nice long night for me.
Call that Bucks loss.
Whoa. You need to calm down over there. You need to calm down over there. Okay. No, it's more of where are we going in the second round of the playoffs. that's where my mindset is at. But yeah, looking forward to tonight's NFL action. But let's get right into it. The opening game of the night is the Hawks and the Hornets. That's like what your favorite team, right?
The Hornets, yeah, I love them.
I know we have kind of talked about that in the past, but look at some of the salaries here. Trae Young over on DK 9,400. Over same exact price over on FanDuel, and then your most expensive Hornet, Gordon Hayward.
Yeah, pretty good matchup, obviously, going up against Atlanta tonight. Hayward's price has come up, from last night, it's actually gone down a couple hundred on DraftKings, but in general, it's come up. But in competitive games, you're still getting at least 34, 35 minutes from him. He's one of the team leaders in usage and assists. He still looks like a good option here. He's priced up enough, where it's not necessarily a priority, but I think that he still looks good. As far as the guards, I mean, that's where obviously things tend to get messy, because typically you're going to only have two of Rozier, Graham, and LaMelo closing. It is interesting, though, last night, the Hornets used their 3-guard lineup for a while against New Orleans. That's something that I'm interested to see if they continue doing it going forward. In the fourth quarter, for several minutes, they had LaMelo, Rozier, and Graham all on the floor together. So that's something just to keep an eye on, because if they do continue going to that lineup, you'll be able to project a couple more minutes for all 3 guards and feel a little bit better about it. As it is right now, though, I think that LaMelo is still interesting in tournaments because the minutes are going to be volatile and his salary is coming up. So he's kind of difficult to trust, but he's so good on a per minute basis. He's averaging like 1.25 fantasy points per minute this year. If you happen to get that 28 or 30 minute game, he's probably going to exceed his salary pretty easily.
Of course, the over-under number on this game, 228. The Hawks are a 5-point favorite in this one. Of course, you can go over to Odds Shopper right there at Awesemo.com to check out the odds for all of these games tonight. 228, looking at that is the fourth highest number on the slate tonight. And, I was going to mention about LaMelo Ball is obviously that price has started to come up. And he's a guy that I've talked about on these shows of, to me, he's going to be a boom bust type play based on, whether he's hitting his jumper or not. I mean, obviously he has done well, averaging 30 points this year in terms of DK in FanDuel, but he's one of those guys that, I mean, I still think there's got to be a little buyer beware because there's a chance where it might be a 2 for 8 type game.
So there's two types of volatility in NBA DFS, and it doesn't really like people tend to like lump them together. But you have minutes volatility, and then you have like scoring volatility, and that's where you start getting into talking about players being scoring dependent and not having peripherals and stuff like that. But Ball is one of these guys where you have both because his minutes are going to range from like 24 to 31 minutes any given game, kind of just depending on how the game goes and how he's playing and how Graham and Rozier are playing. So you have volatility there. And then you also have the volatility in his performance where, he does contribute assists and rebounds, which increases his floor. But games where he shoots well, he's going to put up monster games. Games where he doesn't shoot well, he's going to be more, mediocre. So you kind of have those two different ways where he can either do really well or really poorly. And guys like that tend to be once the pricing catches up as it has started to with Ball, they tend to be at these price points where like they're overpriced for their floor, but they're underpriced for their ceiling. And typically on full size slates, it makes it hard to go to those guys in cash games because their median projection's a little bit lower than their salary suggests it should be, but they're still appealing in tournaments because that volatility drives their ownership down and they still have the ability to so easily outperform their salary in their good games.
A couple of questions we already kind of got, or conversation in the live chat is actually about Devontae Graham, 5,200 on FanDuel, 5,600 on DK. What's your take on him in this spot?
He's cheap enough that you can go there. He's another one where the minutes are going to be kind of all over the place. He played 39 minutes 2 games ago. He played about 37 minutes last night. If you're getting that kind of run from someone at his price tag, even though he has about an 18% usage rate this year, it's just really hard for him to fail at that price tag if you're getting that many minutes. But on the other hand, if you go back 3-4 games ago, he's been affected by blowouts in those games. But even if you looked at his first half rotation, it was a lot shorter. You had Ball stealing minutes from him, and he was more on pace to play like 30 minutes. If you get 30 minutes from Graham, he's not that likely to exceed his salary. So I do think he's cheap enough that he has value here. I would be paying attention pretty closely to projected ownership on him, because if everyone just decides that he's a great value play, then I'd be pretty comfortable staying away in larger field tournaments just because he's still got a really low floor, I think. But if people are going elsewhere, he does still give you that ceiling because while his usage is down, he is leading the team in assist percentage. And, he does clearly have the potential at least to play 36 plus minutes.
Let's move over to the Atlanta side of things. I mean, obviously it all starts with Trae Young and what he can do. Outside of Trae Young, what sticks out to you?
So this matchup's really interesting because I had mentioned it the last time these two teams played, that Charlotte's actually been the best team in the league defending the pick and roll in terms of fewest possessions allowed and in terms of point per possession efficiency. Trae Young leads the league in pick and roll possessions per game. So I was interested to see how it went. I haven't gone back to watch that game. I probably will watch part of it during the day today to see how they were attacking Young, but I do know he had an absolutely awful game the last time that these two teams played. So not sure if that was the reason why, but it is something to keep in mind. Had 16 DraftKings points in 35 minutes, only 9 field goal attempts for Young in that game. So it matches up at least with what the data said coming in. And what that does, if that is something that if they're going to limit Young, you're going to see more 3-point attempts from the wings, from DeAndre Hunter, from Kevin Huerter, from Bogdanovic. Last game, I think it was Kevin Huerter had 5 3-pointers in this matchup. So again, and I said it last time, it's only one data point. Like Trae Young can still just go out there and find a way to have a monster game without a doubt. But I think it is probably a good idea to maybe bump the usage a little bit and consider guys like Hunter, Huerter, and Bogdanovic as having a little bit higher ceiling than they normally would have.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at Bogdanovic, over on FanDuel, he's 3,900, but 4,800 on DraftKings. Do you prefer him on one slate over the other?
You said he was 39 on FanDuel?
Yeah, 39.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good price point. He hasn't been very good this year, but 3,900 for him, assuming you're going to get like 24, 25 minutes, is a great salary.
Yeah, I'm just making sure it copied over what I did when I see it.
Yeah, no, you were right. Sure. I pulled it up.
Okay, all right. I was like, I was like, okay, did I copy it wrong?
Yeah, no, I was just surprised it was that low.
Yeah, man. Anything else from this game that we haven't touched on that you want to hit
on? John Collins, I think. I'm pulling up Atlanta's last game, but he's been getting more center minutes. I'm looking to make sure that it was the same thing last time these two played. Collins played 32 minutes in that game. Bruno Fernando didn't play off the bench. Nathan Knight played 3 minutes. So yeah, you should be getting a lot of backup center minutes for Collins. His salary is still pretty affordable at 7,500 on DraftKings. 6,800 on FanDuel is a great price. So I do like Collins. I like going back to Capella too. He's just too cheap. Especially 6,500 on FanDuel looks like a really good price.
We'll move next over to Phoenix and Indiana. Indiana, a 3.5-point favorite in this one. The over-under number in this game is 215.5. Of course, you can always check out these numbers over at oddshopper.com, awesemo.com, part of OddShopper. Let's start on the Phoenix side of the equation. I mean, obviously, this is a different team this year, and it's all because of Chris Paul. But Chris Paul is one of these guys of like, I go back and forth with him of whether I like him daily and just in terms of daily fantasy. From a basketball side, obviously, he makes his team so much better. But, from a fantasy aspect, sometimes I'm just hit or miss on him.
Yeah, it's kind of the same for me because he's not a high usage guy, but he has been great in terms of assists. So it does give him a pretty high floor there. Like last night, he was disappointing or relatively disappointing for his salary, but he wasn't that far off from having a big game considering, he came pretty close to a triple double there, played like 37 minutes. Typically outside of overtime, you're going to get 30 to 32 minutes from him, which is also an issue because there's a lot of guys in his price range that you can count on to play like 34 minutes when the game's close. So you're losing a couple minutes there, but about 1.14 DraftKings points per minute this year for Paul. He's still cheap enough where I think he's fine. He's not my favorite option, but someone I could see getting to in tournaments.
In terms of from a GPP aspect, in terms of the Suns here, is there one guy that sticks out to you above all else?
Not really. They're just a team where like it's really hard for me to get to anything beyond Booker, Paul, and Ayton. And even those guys I don't really love. Paul, we just talked about the minutes aren't quite as high as some other options, neither is the usage. Booker gets the usage still, but his assist opportunities are down playing with Paul. So you're still going to get some big games from Booker this year just because he's such a good scorer. But he is scoring dependent a lot more so than last year. And at his salary, there's just guys that are going to beat him so often that it's tough to get there. And then DeAndre Ayton, you have concerns about both his playing time and his usage this year. His usage rate's down 3 to 4%, but also even in competitive games, you're typically getting 30 to 32 minutes from Ayton, whereas last year you were getting 34 to 35. And at his salary, those few minutes can make a really big difference. So all three of Paul, Booker, and Ayton are guys where like if they end up in my tournament lineups, I'm fine with it, but none of them look like players that I expect to be prioritizing.
When I look at the Pacers side of thing, I think the story of like the last week with the Pacers definitely has been Malcolm Brogdon. You've had to have him in your lineup. When you look at his last three games, 41 minutes, 46 minutes, 39 minutes. He scored 33, 21, 35 points in those games, and he's shooting the ball. I mean, you're talking about he shot at least 18 times in each of those three games.
Yeah, he's playing phenomenal and he's playing huge minutes too. So this is another example, it's not the same price as Chris Paul, but it's like one player away. You have to sacrifice one player to get from Paul to Brogdon, and you're picking up like 6 or 7 minutes on top of similar per minute production. So no problems at all going right back to Malcolm Brogdon here. The salary is increasing, but those minutes are just so big. Like you said, you're not talking, it would be different if Brogdon were playing 34 minutes a night and had just had a few really good games, but he's playing minutes like he's on the Knicks. I mean, you're getting 39, 41 minutes in regulation. Like he's just playing almost the entire game. There's more usage to go around without TJ Warren. He's looked really good. So I like getting back to Brogdon even at the elevated salary.
Sabonis obviously is a guy that everyone is looking at here when we talk about the Pacers. Every game out. I guess let's start kind of the FanDuel side of the thing. Is it when you look at only having the roster 2 power forwards, where's kind of Sabonis fit in your equation tonight?
I think he looks really good there. He's only $8,800, which is a really good price point. We talked about the minutes for Malcolm Brogdon, but Sabonis has been playing monster minutes all year long as well. You're typically going to get around 37, 38 minutes from him. He's averaged 1.2 FanDuel points per minute this season. I think Sabonis looks really good on DraftKings and FanDuel, but on FanDuel he's actually even a little bit cheaper than DraftKings.
In terms of, Victor Oladipo, I kind of put him in a little bit of the same category that I put Chris Paul in. Obviously he's still kind of, working his way back here. How many minutes is he going to get is always an equation. But at his price point, you look over on DK, he's 7,000, FanDuel 7,200.
Yeah, I'm actually really interested in him because We saw the absolutely awful season from him last year coming back from injury, but it seems like he's rebounded. He's playing big minutes. You're typically getting, the last game against Houston, he played 36 minutes. You're typically getting like 34 to 36 minutes. His salary is still relatively inexpensive. But the big thing for me is that so the usage is at 25.5%. So I think he was about 26% last year. So he hasn't really dropped off in usage, but his true shooting percentage so far this year is about 57%. Last year it was 50.5%. If you look back at previous seasons, though, typically, in that like 54% range, his best season, he was at 57. So he's shooting better this year than last year. I think that there's a pretty good chance that we're at least close to seeing the old Oladipo. He's averaging 1.15 DraftKings points per minute so far this year, which is really nice. I think that his salary just hasn't really increased as much as guys like Brogdon and Sabonis. And while I think that Sabonis and Brogdon deserved those price increases, it kind of leaves Oladipo, I think, a little bit underpriced.
Of course, this is the NBA Strategy Show. If you do have a question on any of these games, hit them up in our premium Slack account or in the YouTube chat. We will get to you as the show does go on. Do want to let you know about a promo we got going on this weekend that you got to take advantage of, and that is get 21 days of Awesemo Plus for only $20 when you use the promo code 2021 at checkout. That gives you access to all the great premium tools and content we have over at Awesemo.com. You can peek in on those ownership projections so you can know who is getting the most ownership. Go to Awesemo.com/promos to take advantage of that deal. Also, if you want to make a year-long commitment, you can get 20% off an Awesemo Plus yearly platinum pass with the promo code HAPPY. This is the only discount on a yearly pass all year long, so you got to take advantage of it now. Take advantage of it right now. Go over to Awesemo.com/promos. You see Jordan's got there up on the screen, so take advantage of that deal right there at Awesemo.com. We'll move on to the next game, and that is Miami and Washington. And, first off, I think the thought with Washington is likely no Russell Westbrook since he played last night.
Yeah, Westbrook not expected to play on back-to-backs this year, so shouldn't be going for Washington. That obviously increases the value of Bradley Beal. I was, talking with you and Jordan before the show. It's almost like obviously I like Beal more on slates where Westbrook doesn't play, but I almost prefer the ones where Westbrook does play because Beal's ownership just ends up being so low, and he's been just a monster this year with or without Westbrook. But the big thing with Westbrook out is that the assist numbers should increase for Beal. He's going to get more assist opportunities in addition to his usage remaining incredibly high. Should play big minutes. One thing, just one slight negative that came out of yesterday's game. After the game, Wizards coach Scott Brooks was asked about Bradley Beal having a couple of poor performances in fourth quarters in their last two games. And he said that it's on him, that he's been playing him too many minutes, that he should probably play like 3 fewer minutes per game. We've heard Scott Brooks say things like this in the past, normally about John Wall, but also about Beal, and then just continue to play them 38 minutes a game. So I'm not putting too much weight into that. I'm not expecting like 33 minutes from Bradley Beal tonight, but it is just one kind of interesting note that came out of the press conference last night that, potentially could negatively impact Beal.
But in the games where we have no Westbrook, who's going to shoot the ball if Beal's not on the court?
Right. Like that's like, I don't think that Brooks is likely to just be like, yeah, okay, we're just going to lose another game because I'm only playing Beal 32 minutes. Maybe we start to see him lose a couple minutes when Westbrook's back. I doubt that it happens tonight. The bigger issue is just that Miami's a really good defensive team. But again, Washington just plays so fast and Beal is so good that I just think he's pretty obviously underpriced with Westbrook being out. It's really hard not to like Beal here.
Yeah, the over-under on this one is 230. And while Washington is 2-7 on the year, they're actually second in points per game at 119.2. So this is, obviously, when Westbrook has been playing, it's a rust ball. We see what it is. But in terms of, as you look at the salaries outside of Bradley Beal, obviously you're going to look at who's going to start point guard in terms of Westbrook, but that one's going to be a chalk play. Is there anybody else on the Wizards that sticks out to you?
So we've gotten two of the guys I've talked about recently are Davis Bertans and Rui Hachimura. Bertans played 27 minutes last night. He played, I think, 32 or 33 the game before that. You're seeing his minutes tick back up after they slowly brought him into the season. He's still really cheap. He's scoring dependent. Like if he's not scoring, you're not going to get a good fantasy night out of him. But he is one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, and you are going to get games where he just gets hot and knocks down 6, 7 3-pointers and can really exceed that salary. And then Hachimura is someone who his minutes, I think, are going to be really volatile. Yesterday we saw 37. The game before that, he didn't play in the fourth quarter. It's going to depend on how he's playing, but the Wizards do like his defensive abilities, and they want him, I think, to be able to defend multiple positions. So he's someone that, does have the ability to play a ton of minutes for a guy that's priced at $4,500.
Another guy I always look at when we're talking about the Wizards is Thomas Bryant. 6,400 on FanDuel, 6,700 on DK.
Yeah, I think he should get more rebounding opportunities without Westbrook. The issue, he's just expensive. I mean, you can get like 31, 32 minutes out of him. He's around the 1 to 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy. It's just not a great matchup. His price tag's still up. I think it's going to be easier for me to get to Beal, Bertans, Rui, and then take shots on guys like Ish Smith at 3,900 or Raul Neto at 4,100 than it is to pay that price for Bryant at center.
Looking at the other side of the equation in this one with the Heat, Bam Adebayo, 8,500 on both platforms. Jimmy Butler, a little more expensive on FanDuel, 8,100, 7,400 over on DK.
Yeah, great price tag on Jimmy Butler at 7,400. We had seen, so his price is down, I think, because the last game he played was the first game this year where he's top 30 minutes, I believe. I'm double checking that now, but yeah, that was second game that he's top 30 minutes because we had him get injured in the Christmas Day game, and then he came back and the Heat were in back-to-back blowouts, so he played 27 and 26 minutes. So it's keeping his salary down, but in competitive games, you're going to get around 33, 34 minutes from Butler. He's close to a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy since last year, and then now you're playing the fastest team in the NBA who has the second least efficient defense. Teams just can go nuts against Washington from a fantasy perspective. So I love Butler here. I think he's one of the better plays on the slate. Looks like he's projected for a ton of ownership as well, as should be the case. Bam Adebayo in a similar mold where he should do really well. This Washington team can't rebound. Bam picks up assists, he scores, he does everything well. His price tag is not as appealing as Butler's, and it should keep his ownership down, but I think he has a 50 plus point ceiling here as well.
When I think about the Heat, I'm always looking at, when I'm looking at the, quote unquote, the rest of the guys. I'm looking at Duncan Robinson. I'm looking at Tyler Hero. And of course, there was one point on FanDuel. Tyler Hero was just smash him because the salary it wasn't fitting of what he could produce. Duncan Robinson, you just know this is a guy that, if he's hitting the threes, he's going to score you big if you can hit him. He's 4,300 over on FanDuel and 4,700 on DK.
Yeah, kind of similar to the Davis Bertans play where he's not going to do much as far as assists. He's going to rebound less than Bertans, but he just has, those games where he goes out there and he can't miss from three. Certainly should get plenty of open looks against Washington. Should also just get more possessions in general because of the pace of the game. So not a priority, but certainly someone you can use as kind of a last guy in because the upside in this spot's really good. You mentioned Hero, his salary's up enough where I'm not really that interested at 6,600 on DraftKings. The one other guy I would point out here though is Kelly Olynyk, who has started the last 2 games for Miami. He played a bunch in the first game that he started. He only played about 21 minutes last game against Boston, but he also dealt with some foul trouble in that game. He lost about 5 minutes in the first half. He picked up his 3rd foul, subbed out in the 3rd quarter after picking up his 4th foul, and then never came back. I think if he's playing well and not in foul trouble, you still can get like 28 to 30 minutes from Olynyk in a really good spot here.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, 23 points average on FanDuel and over on DK, he's at 24. Anybody else, in terms of value plays that you haven't mentioned from the Heat that people should be looking at?
I don't think so. I mean, the really cheap guys are like Bradley and Iguodala, but neither of them are likely to play enough minutes to justify the fact that they produce like half a fantasy point per minute.
We'll move on. Next, we have got Cleveland at Milwaukee. Looking at the odds on this one, Milwaukee, the over-under on this one is 223 points. The point spread is minus 12 here. I guess the first off is, are you concerned about potential blowout here?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. The thing is, though, and it comes up basically every time that Milwaukee plays, you have to, the most important thing in DFS that you have to keep in mind is the pricing. And if the Bucks weren't consistently involved in blowouts. Giannis would be like $12,000 every slate. Chris Middleton would be like 8,500. Drew's price would be higher as well. So these guys are priced kind of for their average production, which includes the fact that they very often don't play as many minutes as they would in competitive games. So the blowout's definitely a risk, but also the offense is so concentrated to Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday that if Milwaukee does score enough points in a short period of time to really make this game one that's over after 3 quarters, you're probably just getting really efficient production from at least one of those 3. So the blowout is a risk. And if I were playing a lineup where, I had like 2 of Giannis and Middleton or Middleton and Drew or something, I'd probably or definitely be running it back with someone from Cleveland trying to get all 4 quarters there. But just as far as one-offs go, like this is a team with a 118 implied total. There's probably going to be one of these guys that has a really big game.
Andre Drummond is a guy that, we saw a little bit of price decrease. Prices come back up. He's 9,200 on FanDuel. My only concern with him is getting in foul trouble.
Yeah, the foul trouble is a problem, and JaVale McGee is also a little bit of a problem. We've seen this year where there's some games where McGee just plays well and Drummond loses minutes because of that. But we did get 37 minutes from Drummond last game, which is really good to see. That's a couple games in a row where McGee has gone back to taking more of like a true backup role. I'm not sure if Popcorn Machine is wrong or if they played alongside each other last game. That would be pretty crazy. Popcorn Machine says 37 minutes for Drummond, 17 for McGee. At first glance, it looks like they didn't make any mistakes, so maybe that happened. But either way, if you can get 33, 34 minutes from Drummond at his current price point, I think that's good. He's had plenty of success in the past against Brook Lopez for whatever that's worth. Lopez actually has had a lot of success from a DFS standpoint against Drummond too, so could be a matchup where both centers do well.
And Cleveland's a team that's just been rattled with injuries. You go up and down, of the guys who are out, currently. Colin Sexton's been dealing with the injury this week as well. I mean, outside of Drummond, Larry Nance, we'll see what with Sexton. You mentioned about JaVale McGee. I know the other day Austin was coming up in some crunches for me, but he's just a guy that I don't know. I don't like rostering.
Yeah, so we have Sexton questionable today. If he's out, and so I just double checked a different site, and it looks like McGee did actually play alongside Drummond when they were shorthanded against Memphis. It makes sense, I guess, when you have that Valanciunas, Brandon Clark lineup, you can do that. I wouldn't expect that much tonight against Milwaukee, but anyway, like Chetty, if Sexton is out, should play huge minutes again. He played 38 minutes last game, should take on more ball handling responsibility as well. He's decently priced. Like I don't think that he's 6,200 on DraftKings. I don't think he blows that out of the water that often, but I do think that it's still a decent price tag when you consider the minutes and the extra assist opportunities he should get if Colin Sexton sits.
If this does end up becoming a blowout and, Giannis, Middleton, Holiday don't get the minutes that you would like them to get, who are we going to on that Bucks roster?
I think Portis would be the first place to look because, and the reason I like him is if this game's competitive, he can still have a good game. We've seen him play a little bit alongside Brook Lopez recently, but also there's times where he just takes minutes away from Lopez. Normally like in a competitive game, you'll probably get 20 to 22 minutes from Portis, but there's at least the potential that he plays 24 or 25. If the game blows out, you could get a little bit extra run for Portis with that second unit. So, and he's a really productive per minute player. So, you can look there. You could look to Bryn Forbes or DJ Augustine, both at close to minimum salary, especially if, cheap value doesn't open up somewhere else on the slate.
In terms on the cash side, what's your thoughts about Giannis and cash tonight as opposed to GPP?
I haven't built a lineup yet, so hard to say. But if I get to him, I'm obviously not going to be upset with it. We do have Luka on the slate going up against Orlando. His price has come up where he's actually $100 or $200 more than Giannis, which makes me think that maybe I'm more likely to get to Giannis now that he's less expensive than Luka.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one. I foresee myself getting to more Luka than I get to Giannis. Of course, I mentioned about the line on this one, -12 for the Bucks, so there is a little blowout potential there. But, of course, if you want to check out the odds, you got to go over to Awesemo.com, Odd Shopper, as don't make a bet without shopping the odds first. Sign up today for free to track your bets, receive alerts when a line does move, so you know exactly where the best place to place a line there. You see Jordan's got the line up there. You can check out all the sports out there, whether you look at the NBA or maybe today's NFL. So head over to awesemo.com. Right there, top of the screen, you'll see Odd Shopper to sign up today and figure out where you do want to place your bet. Next up, you got the Spurs and the T-Wolves in this one. What's your general thought, kind of what you're seeing in terms of the salaries in these two teams?
So a lot of stuff up in the air here. Karl Anthony Towns questionable for this game. If he comes back, it basically makes everybody on Minnesota overpriced, possibly with the exception of Towns, but who knows how many minutes he plays. But you've had you've had Russell's salary come up, Malik Beasley's salary has come up a little bit. Those guys would lose usage if Towns is back. Beasley's still cheap enough where just based on minutes played, he could get there, but it would make the team in general pretty unappealing. If Towns is out though, then you still have plenty of upside for Russell, for Beasley. So much usage goes to them. Russell about 28% usage rate when Towns is out, and it is a pretty good matchup against San Antonio. So a lot depends on the Karl Anthony Towns news.
In terms of on the other side with the Spurs, DeRozan 8,300 on FanDuel, 7,800 on DK.
Yeah, his salary is up a little bit from when Aldridge was out, but it's still not like too expensive because he's better when Aldridge doesn't play, but it's not like he's bad when Aldridge does. He goes from about a 1.2 to a 1.13 fantasy point per minute player in games that he plays with Aldridge. So you take that and then you take the matchup against Minnesota, which is obviously a good one. You can expect typically, 34, 35 minutes from DeRozan in competitive games. So I still think that he's a little bit underpriced on DraftKings, in particular at 7,800. I like getting to him. I like getting to all three of the main guys. You have him, you have DeJounte Murray, who can play more minutes with Derek White sideline. We got 36 minutes a couple games ago, 32 from him last game against the Lakers. Typically, I think you'll see him in that 32-minute range, but there's the upside for more. But, another guy that produces at a high fantasy rate and is a mid-range play. Aldridge's game against the Lakers stands out because he played 31 minutes. We had seen him prior to his injury often playing like 27, 28 minutes. We hadn't really seen his minutes ramp up, but getting between 31 and 32 minutes from him makes a $6,300 salary against a weak Minnesota front court look like a pretty good price tag.
Yeah, one of the questions we had in the chat was basically about if Cat doesn't play, is it essentially smash LaMarcus Aldridge?
Even if Cat plays, I think you can. I don't think Cat has a huge difference on Aldridge. Like, I think Aldridge should have success in that spot regardless.
Yeah, I think the question for me with Cat is just if he does play, how many minutes are they going to put him? Is there going to be a minutes restriction?
Right. That's like my assumption is that he won't come out and play like 38 minutes right out of the gate. Like he probably will be, 2 weeks from now. Maybe gets like 30, but again, that's just completely guessing. But like with or without him, I think Aldridge is in a good spot.
In terms of value plays in this one, of course, ever since Cat's been out, everyone's been going to Naz Reid, a couple other ones. I keep peeking at Anthony Edwards, keep waiting for kind of when's the huge breakout game going to come from him. But as you look at value plays, what intrigues you?
I keep looking at Edwards too, because I just don't understand what Minnesota's doing with him. Like you have a team that's not competitive and instead you're just running all these completely mediocre guys out there instead of like developing your first overall pick. So logically, it seems like he should start getting more minutes. He played 31 minutes against Portland, but that was a lot of blowout run. He played the entire fourth quarter alongside guys like Jaden McDaniels and Jared Vanderbilt. Like that, it wasn't a game where Minnesota, he didn't get minutes. He was going to probably play about his normal 25, 26 minutes had that game not blown out. And he went nuts in the fourth quarter in garbage time. So it's a price tag where like it won't be surprising if you see a game, relatively soon where Edwards just has a monster game because Minnesota wakes up and plays him more minutes. But the way they're using him right now, it's just really hard to justify that salary when there's a lot of guys that you can feel better about at that price point. And if Towns is back, then it makes the minutes for Hernan Gomez a little bit riskier. It takes appeal away from, whatever appeal Naz Reid had left, it takes away basically.
I felt like that appeal's already been gone.
Yeah, I mean, once Jerry Vanderbilt started playing center and made this a three-man rotation, the appeal pretty much disappeared anyway.
Yeah, that disappeared there. Of course, be sure to smash that like button right here on YouTube. We got almost 500 people in here watch us here on a Saturday morning live. Be sure to smash that like button. Let's get those likes over 150 here in the next couple of minutes. Of course, be sure to keep it locked here at awesemo.com all day long. We're going to get you ready for today's NFL action. We got the NFL Deeper Dive coming up right after us to get you ready for a trio of NFL playoff action today. As I saw, like, for all the Bills fans, they had to go get COVID tested. My question is, are they letting them tailgate? Because if they're tailgating, I'm going hopping on that Instagram hashtag Bills Mafia, see what they're doing over there.
I'm sure they are somewhere. I don't know how public it'll be.
I saw on my Facebook tab, like, it was a sponsored post. It was like smash the tables or bring the tables with the Bills logo on it. Yeah. I've always said, man, just if you live in Buffalo, just open up a folding table shop. You're only open during football season.
There's a Bills bar like right outside my apartment, but I haven't actually. I go to that bar a lot, but I haven't been there during a Bills game.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure it's a good time.
Yeah, I can only imagine what it's going to be like in Buffalo for that one, but we got you covered all day long. We'll move on over to the Magic and the Mavericks. The Magic just got run out of the building last night by the Rockets, losing by 30. And of course, Dallas, we know what they're all about. Obviously, we on the Magic side of the equation, and me and you have talked about this in the past. I mean, obviously, you're confident what Vooch is going to do. You pretty much have a good idea of what Vooch is going to bring to you day in and day out. 8,800 on both slates. But with the Magic, obviously, the injury situation that has plagued this team, from the start of the year to now, losing Markelle Fultz the other day. To me, with the Magic, it's always about, what supporting cast are you looking at? T. Ross has a chance to go off, but he's a guy that, he as I can see Jordan in the background just shaking his head about T. Ross. He's one of those guys that, look, if he catches fire, yeah, he can get you 30 points, but there's times it's just a team. It's tough to trust a supporting cast.
Yeah, especially if they're injured. I mean, we don't have an injury report for them yet since they played yesterday, but we know Aaron Gordon sat yesterday. We know Evan Fournier missed another game yesterday. And we know Markelle Fultz is out for the year. If you're coming into this game and the only actual starter you have is Vooch, there's only so much he can do to keep this game competitive. Like they're down so many guys right now, and they're not that good in the first place. Like they're a good enough team, but they're not great. They can't afford to be missing all of Fultz, Fournier, Isaac, and Gordon. So that's the big thing, is you'll get value like we did last night. Prices have come up a little bit on some of those guys, but they're value plays that are just not very good. Like not to say they're bad DFS plays, they're just not good producers. Like Alex asked me on the show yesterday if I trusted, I think it was Gary Clark, and I was like, no, I don't trust him at all, because he can play 30 minutes and score 8 points. But they're going to be decent point per dollar options if everyone else is out. But you're going to need to wait for Aaron Gordon news, Evan Fournier news. Gordon has one of the highest usage rates on the team this year. So if he's out, that opens up a lot. Fournier is a capable ball handler who is around the 20 to 21% usage guy. Don't know how many minutes he would play if he comes back, but if you can get around 30 minutes from him, that would probably make a pretty big deal for Orlando and make them a lot more competitive as well.
Last night everyone was on Cole Anthony with him being in the starting lineup. He's 4,800 on FanDuel, 5,500 on DraftKings. I mean, he's at the same price as Evan Fournier. And if Evan Fournier plays, as much as he's just one of these guys that, boom bust. That's what he is.
Yeah, and the price on Anthony, especially on DraftKings at 5,500, is tough because, for one, and it's something Alex and I talked about yesterday, like Anthony has the potential to score, and we've seen him do it off the bench, but it's different when you're playing with Vooch, and Vooch is dominating touches, especially because Vooch can pick up assists as well. But we also got the report from Steve Clifford not too long before lock yesterday that Cole Anthony wasn't going to be able to play as many minutes as Markelle Fultz, that in the game he played 32 minutes. He was hurting really badly after the game. And then we saw him play 28 minutes last night. So I think the expectation for Anthony should be more in that 28-minute range than low to mid 30s. And that's a really big deal when you consider that the salary's already been priced up. Like if you assume this is going to be a 0.9 to 1 fantasy point per minute guy, there's a really big difference at his salary between him getting 28 points on average and him getting like 33 points on average.
Now, when you look at the Mavericks, another team that, as I was putting together my CSV and, with all the guys who are already listed as out, like to me, this is a Luka smash spot on both slates.
Yeah, I mean everything pretty much is anyway. But yeah, like there's no reason not to like Luca here. And I mentioned his salary being higher than Giannis earlier. I didn't mean that to imply that he's overpriced because it's a situation where his salary has come up from being drastically underpriced. So he's just like closer to accurate now. But there was no real reason to be concerned with Luca earlier in the year when he was struggling to shoot. He's just not a great shooter. You're going to get some poor shooting streaks, but he is a great scorer. He's great. He's a good rebounder. He's great at getting assists. So everything still looks really good for Luca. The minutes are there, which is great. No concerns there, and should be able to have a monster game against Orlando.
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the Dallas Mavericks injury report. Trey Burke, he is probable tonight. Jalen Brunson is out due to health and safety protocols. Finney Smith, same situation. Josh Richardson also is ruled out here today. So, I mean, the question with the Mavericks is, outside of Luka, where are you going?
3K Trey Burke is absolutely insane. Yeah, so no Jalen Brunson, no Dorian Finney-Smith, and no Josh Richardson. That leaves Luka, Burke, basically as your 2 point guards. Like James Johnson can handle the ball a bit. I think James Johnson's also a really good value at 3,200. Burke's a great value at 3K. Hardaway probably plays like as many minutes as he can handle. He's he's 5,900, so not the same value, but there is potential there. And then in the front court too, though, you have value with Willie Cauley-Stein. Still only 4K on DraftKings. Granted, it costs you a center spot, so the opportunity cost is high. But he started 2 games in a row. He played about 26 minutes in the first start. And then last game, he played 22 in regulation, but he dealt with some foul trouble. I think that you're getting, 24 to 26 minutes from him, assuming, he's not in foul trouble. He's always been a pretty good fantasy producer, around 1 to 1.05 DraftKings points per minute. So I think he's a good value. I think Burke and Johnson are the best values.
I mean, is Dallas the value team of the night outside of Luka? In your mind?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you have these injuries, and then the really nice thing, like you can compare them to last night's Orlando and how poorly that went. But the nice thing is that like Trey Burke is actually a decent per minute producer when he's on the floor. James Johnson's a decent per minute producer when he's on the floor. These guys are different than James Ennis and Gary Clark. Like they do more than just run up and down the floor and stand in the corner.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at our early ownership projections, I got to imagine by the time we get to 6 o'clock, Trey Burke is going to be one of the most popular plays of the night.
Yeah, there's just no reason for him not to be. He's on average with Dallas been about a 3/4 of a fantasy point per minute guy, which isn't great, but he's going to handle the ball a lot. He's going to get up more shots. The minutes basically have to be there with these guys out. So I mean, obviously I haven't made my lineups yet, but I'd be shocked if I'm not close to 100% on Trey Burke. And really the same goes for James Johnson, because we've seen, this is a guy that we saw run point with Miami. This isn't like a random, power forward that's just stepping in and you're hoping he gets a bunch of rebounds. There's going to be ball handling opportunities whenever Luka's not on the floor, and Johnson just can contribute. He contributes assists. He can score a little bit. He can rebound. The minutes combined with the potential production from Johnson and Burke just make them clear top values, in my opinion.
And it has to be a legit concern if this game is a blowout. At what point could Luka exit the game?
Yeah, and you would expect that, Burke and Johnson are a little bit safer in that regard because they're not going to be concerned about, potentially running them into the ground.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Giannis, the potential of a blowout there. You got the potential to be here, but I mean, I'm like looking at my sheet here just with the salaries, and you look at all the top Maverick players who are just not in the lineup, and you bring up a great point about Hardaway. Just how many minutes could he play, and could he be the guy that tomorrow morning, when we go in the Cruncher rewind, we see that Hardaway was one of the best plays of the night.
Yeah, and I do want to retract my Giannis over Luka and cash statement. I totally forgot that Dallas was missing half their team. Give me Luka for the $200 price difference.
Of course, the final game of the night is going to be Portland and Sacramento. Portland, when it comes to the line, they're a 6-point favorite. Of course, you can go over to Odd Shopper over there at Awesemo.com to check out the odds for this one. I was watching that Kings game last night, but what's your overall thoughts on this one?
So there's one thing in this, it's not the most important thing, but I'll lead with it so I don't forget. Sacramento gave up, 144 points to Toronto last night. We got a quote from Sean Cunningham, who's a reporter for the covers the Kings. The quote from Luke Walton is, "We're not going to be able to just outscore people." He said, talking about the troubles defensively, and he mentioned that he may be going to Hassan Whiteside to attempt to correct some of those problems. So when I saw that, the first thing I did was look to see when the next time was that Sacramento was playing a big front court where Whiteside could realistically play. And now we're getting Yusuf Nurkic and Enes Kanter playing 48 minutes at center for Portland. So 3,200 on DraftKings. Whiteside's been in and out of the rotation this year. When he's played, you're typically getting like 12, 14 minutes from him. I'm not saying I think Whiteside starts this game and plays 30 minutes or something like that, but I do think there's a pretty good chance that you're getting like mid-teens in minutes off the bench for Whiteside, probably at like zero ownership because he hasn't played in a couple of days. It's the kind of spot where in large field tournaments, it can win you a tournament having, a minimum salary guy that averages production at the rate that Whiteside does. Obviously there's a risk that he just doesn't play again, but the matchup suits him where you're going up against two bigs. Walton's talking about playing him because their defense has been awful. I think it's a spot where I'm going to gamble some in large field tournaments to go to Whiteside. Outside of that, guys that, actually we know are going to play tonight. You have De'Aaron Fox played last night, was on a minutes limit, ended up playing 25 minutes. So, I mean, really part of that was blowout, but still probably only lost, 4 or 5 minutes there. So it's tough to trust Fox at his price tag. Like you're probably only getting around 30 minutes from him. Barnes, Holmes, Bagley, like these guys all have some upside. Barnes plays the most minutes out of the group, but their salaries have just all come up to where I don't really see much that I'm interested in from Sacramento as a priority. You can go to any of those guys in tournaments, but priority wise, it's just really tough to get to anything from the Kings.
And by the way, to mention the price point on Whiteside, 3,200 on DraftKings, and over on FanDuel, he is 4,000.
Yeah, don't play him on FanDuel.
Yeah,
I mean, the opportunity cost is just too high. Like the reason that it's okay on DraftKings is you can use him in that utility spot and still roster like a center, an actual center that's going to do well. But on FanDuel, like you're potentially giving up so many points at the position for a guy that may not play, and if he does play, he might play like 10 minutes.
Of course, got a couple minutes here left in the show. Of course, if you ever do miss our shows, all the shows are part of the Awesemo Podcast Network. Just go over to awesemo.com. You see right there at the top of the screen, the Podcast Network. Check out all the shows are on their individual feeds for the sports, but also if you just want all of the shows on one feed, there is a Awesemo show there. So be sure to check that over there at the Awesemo Podcast Network. Be sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcasting platform, and you can win a free week of Awesemo Plus, as we're giving out a free Awesemo Plus pass every week to the person who submits our favorite review. Good luck in terms of that one. In terms of, you mentioned about the center position with the Trailblazers. How are you kind of going into this with Nurkic and Kanter in terms of minutes?
It's been really tough this year because Nurkic is pretty clearly losing minutes to Kanter. And it's not unusual. Like you see that in a lot of situations when a player has a competent backup. Like just look to Denver last year where Jokic was playing 32 minutes a game because he had Mason Plumlee, but in games Plumlee didn't play, he's able to play 36, 37 minutes. It's kind of been the same thing where Nurkic is typically playing 26, 27 minutes in competitive games, and then Kanter is getting the rest. Last game was a blowout against Minnesota, so you only got 23 minutes from Nurkic, you got 14 from Kanter. But I think assuming a competitive game, you'll probably get 26, 27 minutes from Nurkic. He's cheap enough that he does have a pretty nice ceiling there just based on what we know he's capable of doing. He hasn't been that productive this year. He did actually admit that he's got some family situation going on back in Bosnia that is affecting him and has been affecting his play. That's not something that you can really project for, but at least we do kind of have maybe a reason for why he's not been that good this year from a fantasy standpoint. But with his price point being where it is, I think that there still has to be interest there just because we know what this guy can do on a per minute basis when he's playing well.
Of course, when you look at some of the quote unquote value plays out of the Trailblazers, the guy everyone we look to pretty much in every slate, they're playing Derek Jones Jr. 4K on DraftKings.
I don't think I'll need to get there much on this slate because you have the Dallas value that I think is pretty good. You potentially have Orlando value. The thing with Jones, I mean, he's just like a zero point 0.6 to zero point 0.7 fantasy point per minute guy. He's getting 30 plus minutes in most games where he's not in foul trouble though, which does give him some value. It makes him project as like around a 5x type of play, which that will get into some lineups, especially if he's low owned. It's just that, you have to run pretty good to actually get a game from Derek Jones that you're happy with.
Yeah. McCollum in that price point, is the price point getting a little too high for you?
It's too high for me in cash games, but I still don't mind it in tournaments. And the big reason why is that Terry Stotts is staggering his minutes with Lillard. And this is something that has always made both Lillard and McCollum more valuable, but especially McCollum. But Stotts at times in the past has been hesitant to do it because I don't remember his reasoning. It didn't make any sense, but he's doing it this year. And that makes it so that you're getting, if you assume Lillard's playing 36, 37 minutes, that's giving you 11 or 12 minutes for McCollum, where he's out there with the second unit with the ball in his hands, picking up more assists, getting more shots up. It makes it so that the usage for him is a lot higher than it would be if he's just playing all of his minutes alongside Dame. So I don't think that he keeps producing at the same rate that he has been. He's shooting better than his career averages. Dame is shooting below his career averages so far. I think that you see Lillard eventually be the higher per minute guy, which hasn't been the case this year, surprisingly. But McCollum, I think, does still have tournament upside even at his salary, given the fact that he's playing like 30% of his minutes without Lillard on the floor.
What's your take on Lillard in this spot tonight?
I think he's underpriced. I mean, he's someone I'll be interested to see how the ownership looks like between him and Beal, because obviously I really like Beal, but there's a $200 price difference between them. If they're going to be, similarly owned, then I would lean towards Beal. But if you're going to, by lock, if you're going to get, 3 times the ownership going to Beal, there's no reason Lillard can't outscore him in this matchup. The Kings have been awful defensively. It's a good matchup for Lillard. Like I said, he's been shooting a little bit below his career averages, so his per minute production should go up as well. He plays big minutes. I really like Lillard here. It's just, a matter of being able to get him in lineups and also still wanting to get the Beal, wanting to get the Luka, wanting to get the Giannis, wanting to get to these expensive guys.
Yeah. In terms of Sacramento, you mentioned about Fox. Is there anybody else? And you mentioned about Whiteside, the value on DraftKings in terms of GPP. Was there anybody else?
Not really. I mean, like Bagley can do well, but he's probably not going to play more than 30 minutes. I mean, he played the best game he's played in a really long time the other day and still didn't close the game against Chicago. That makes me really hesitant to think that he has the ability to play more than 30 minutes right now. Not physically, just, in Luke Walton's mind. Holmes, at 6K has some potential value. Typically you're going to get like 30 to 32 minutes from him. But it's just, I think they're all correctly priced basically.
News God over in our Slack account sharing a tweet what Saunders said about Cat. He says, we'll go through shoot around and see how he feels, engage off how he feels, and what the medical people say.
Cool.
I don't know if that doesn't sound too promising to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not he's going to play.
When the coach says, we'll see what the medical people say, I usually take that as a sign of, that's probably less than 50% chance he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, it's the 8:00 game, so hopefully we'll get that news before the 7:00 games lock.
Yeah, I just being around sports broadcasts for a long time. Usually that statement to me says he's likely not playing.
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of we're hopeful in that statement. It was
no, there wasn't any at all. But yeah. But that's the thing. You gotta pay attention to those late swaps and potentially get someone in there. Of course, be sure to take advantage of the promo we got going on over at Awesemo.com. You see it right there on the screen. Coming up next is NFL Deeper Dive. They'll get you ready for today's trio of NFL action. That'll be Lawfully, Alex, and Ben getting you ready for today's game. Keep it locked here to Awesemo.com all day long. And that is going to do it for today's edition of the NBA Strategy Show.